So, um, usually when we think about engineering something truly spectacular, like I don't know, a massive suspension bridge or a revolutionary microchip, we naturally focus on the constraints.
Right,
We
yeah.
think about gravity, material tensile strength, thermodynamics, heat dissipation, and the brilliance of the design comes from how it navigates those absolute physical limits to,
Hmm.
create something functional and beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, without gravity pulling down on it, a bridge doesn't really need arches or suspension cables. It doesn't even have a shape, really. It's just an abstract line floating in a void. So the constraints are, well, they're precisely what give the final product its architecture.
Exactly. But step into the world of traditional theology, specifically how history has defined a creator of the universe, and suddenly all of those structural constraints are just thrown right out the window.
Oh, totally.
We use words like limitless, unbounded, or infinite. We've kind of assumed that an absolute lack of limits is the ultimate flex of power.
Yeah, it is the definition of a conceptual blank check.
Right. And what we are exploring today is why cashing that blank check might actually, well, bankrupt our logical ability to think about a creator at all. We are unpacking a fascinating epistemological puzzle centered around Dr. Michael Huemer's arguments against omnitheism.
And we're going to dive into why defining a deity as absolutely limitless might actually break the math in probability and explore this incredibly practical alternative framework called engineering theology.
But before we go any further, let's lay down a crucial ground rule for you, the listener. We're remaining strictly impartial throughout this entire exploration.
Yes, absolutely.
We are not taking a stance on whether God exists. We are not endorsing atheism, traditional religion, or this limited theology we're discussing. We are purely looking at the logical, mathematical, and philosophical mechanics of how human beings structure their thoughts about the ultimate unknown.
Exactly. It's an analysis of the concepts, not a judgment on the reality.
Okay, let's unpack this. We need to start with the math of infinity itself, which is where Dr. Michael Huemer, a philosophy professor at CU Boulder, really focuses his critique.
Right.
He argues that a limited theism is statistically and logically much more probable than the traditional belief in an omni-god, a being with infinite power, infinite knowledge, infinite goodness.
Yeah, and he builds this argument by attacking the actual application of infinity to reality.
Hmm.
Rumor points out that actual infinity is, well, it's entirely incompatible with determinate amounts.
How so?
Well, the moment you try to apply infinity to a functioning physical system or a specific property, you instantly generate logical paradoxes. Consider the idea of infinite velocity in a physical universe.
Right, which doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. It doesn't correlate to anything real. Infinity isn't a massive number you can just plug into an equation. It is a concept that fundamentally destabilizes the equation itself.
It feels like trying to break the physics engine in a video game. Like if you hack into the code of a game and set a character's speed or mass to infinity, the game doesn't just make them super fast or incredibly heavy.
No, the system glitches out and crashes.
Right. The underlying architecture cannot compute when specific functional values are replaced by a concept of forever. The system just breaks.
And because the system breaks, probability distributions and statistics naturally skew away from extreme values. I mean,
Yeah,
the absolute extreme is always the least likely outcome.
makes sense.
So, a priori, assigning the most extreme value possible, which is infinity, to any attribute carries a massive statistical presumption against it. To justify that extreme, you would need an overwhelming, virtually impossible amount of evidence.
But wait, back up a second. Doesn't modern math use infinity all the time? Like, I vaguely remember hearing about different sizes of infinity in calculus or set theory.
Yeah, you are thinking of the Georg-Cantor's set theory, which revolutionized mathematics by proving there are indeed different hierarchies of infinity. Cantor introduced transfinite numbers, like Aleph null, which represents the size of the set of all natural numbers.
Okay, yeah.
But Huemer operates on a philosophical principle called phenomenal conservatism.
Phenomenal conservatism.
Yeah, it's the idea that we should assume things are as they intuitively appear unless we have overwhelming evidence to the contrary. So he rejects applying Cantor's transfinite numbers to reality as what are called intensive magnitudes.
Oh, I need a definition there. What is an intensive magnitude?
An intensive magnitude is a property that doesn't depend on physical size or extent. So temperature is an intensive magnitude. Density is another.
Oh, I see.
You can't just keep adding temperature forever in a coherent physical system.
Yeah.
Eventually, the physics just break down. So Huemer treats infinity not as a neat, mathematically scalable number that exists in nature, but as a paradoxical indeterminate maximum.
Wow.
Applying it to an intensive magnitude, like power or goodness, renders the concept logically illegitimate in a real-world application. Cantor's math works beautifully on a chalkboard, but you literally cannot build a functional universe out of it.
Which completely upends the classical argument that an infinite, all-powerful God is the simplest explanation for the universe.
Yeah.
Because, traditional thinking is that a limitless God is the easy answer since you don't have to define any boundaries or do any complicated math.
Yeah, but in the realm of theory construction, that easy answer is actually a fatal flaw. This is known as the simplicity in parameters argument. Classical theology argues an infinite God is a simple theory.
Right.
But in the philosophy of science, a theory that can accommodate literally any data is basically useless. I mean, an all-powerful God can explain any possible world, no matter how chaotic or contradictory. If a theory predicts everything, it predicts nothing. It cannot be tested or verified.
Oh, wow. I see how that crashes headfirst into the problem of evil. If you posit an omnipotent, omnibenevolent being, the immense suffering in the universe becomes a massive logical hurdle. You are forced to invent complex, hidden reasons why this limitless being permits it.
Yeah, you have to do all these mental gymnastics.
But humor suggests that a limited creator, one working with actual engineering constraints, who literally lacks the power to prevent all suffering while maintaining the necessary physical laws of the universe, offers a mathematically sound and logical solution.
It totally removes the need for mysterious justifications and replaces them with the reality of structural limitations. I mean, if an engineer wants to build a bridge, they cannot make it weightless.
Right.
If a creator wants to build a universe with consistent physical laws or free will, they might literally not have the infinite power to prevent earthquakes without breaking the laws of plate tectonics.
Okay, so if the math of infinity is this broken and statistically improbable, why did classical theologians lock themselves into these omni-definitions in the first place? Like, what does calling a creator omnipotent or limitless actually accomplish linguistically?
Linguistically, it accomplishes nothing functional. It operates as a definitional shell game.
A shell game.
Yeah, omni-attributes are vacuously defined. They describe a creator entirely by what they are not limited by, so there is absolutely no operational content.
You are just drawing a closed semantic circle. Like if you define a being strictly as limitless, you immunize the concept from any empirical contact. You can't argue against the definition internally.
Exactly.
It becomes an exercise in lexicography, not discovery. You define a word and demand that reality conform to it.
And this leads directly into the alternative framework of engineering theology.
Yes, let's talk about that.
In this view, true power is not the absence of limits. True power is the capacity to optimize within chosen limits. Just look at the actual universe we inhabit. It does not look limitless.
No, it's highly structured.
It exhibits highly specific observable structures. We experience 3 dimensions of space and 1 of time. We operate under the standard model of particle physics. We even have strict information theoretic bounds like the Bekenstein bound.
Wait, let's pause on the Bekenstein bound because that sounds like a critical piece of evidence for this engineering framework. What exactly is that limit?
The Bekenstein bound is a theorem in physics that dictates the absolute maximum amount of information that can be contained within a given volume of space.
Okay.
It proves that space isn't infinitely compressible. There is a hard mathematical cap on how much data a region of the universe can hold before it literally collapses into a black hole. It is a strict, undeniable engineering parameter of reality.
I want to genuinely ask about this, though. Intuitively, doesn't having absolutely zero constraints still feel like the ultimate form of power? Like if a supreme being can just do anything without breaking a sweat or following rules, isn't that vastly more powerful than having to calculate a Bekenstein bound?
Well, consider how the most sophisticated technology in human history is developed. Does true brilliance come from having unlimited resources and absolutely no rules?
Ah, I see where you're going. When I think about an F1 racing engine or the microprocessor inside a smartphone, the absolute pinnacle of engineering emerges exclusively from embracing severe constraints.
Exactly.
You're fighting against thermodynamic limits, material sciences, heat dissipation. An omni-engineer who faces no material limits, who doesn't have to fight the laws of thermodynamics, isn't actually engineering anything.
Right, they just snap their fingers and it appears.
There is no structure, no optimization, no brilliant workaround. It's just wish fulfillment.
And what's fascinating here is the epistemological payoff of recognizing those constraints is enormous. If a creator acts as an engineer who selects specific parameters from a menu of options, the theory of that creator becomes falsifiable.
Oh, that's a big deal.
It gains explanatory specificity.
Yeah.
The universe looks designed precisely because it operates within tight, mathematically elegant boundaries.
Hmm.
An omnigod faces no decisions, so the specific character of our universe, why it has the exact gravitational constant it does, or why it has 3 spatial dimensions instead of 4, has literally no explanation.
Wow. Okay, so if this creator is acting as a cosmic engineer, picking physical laws from a menu of options to build a universe, um, exactly how big is that menu? How many possible universes are we actually talking about?
Theoretical physics provides an estimate for that through the string theory landscape. Physicists calculate there are roughly 10 to the power of 500 metastatable vacuum states.
10 to the 500 power. That is insane. Just to be clear, a metastable vacuum state is essentially a possible coherent universe with its own set of physical constants, right? Like a universe that won't immediately collapse in on itself.
Precisely. It is an astronomically vast number of potential realities. Now, omnitheism claims a creator has total power over all metaphysical possibilities.
Right.
But here is the massive category error human beings make. 10 to the 500 isn't all possible worlds. It is strictly the boundary of worlds that are comprehensible within our current theoretical and mathematical framework.
So, are we essentially projecting our own cognitive limits onto the divine? Is this like a goldfish swimming around its bowl, genuinely believing the ocean ends exactly where the curved glass stops?
Yes, we are absolutely conflating what we can do math for with what is metaphysically real.
Oh, man.
To break this down, consider a strict hierarchy of existence. First, there is what is metaphysically possible. This category is totally epistemically closed to us. We have no idea what is in that box, or if the box even exists in a way we understand.
Right. It's totally opaque.
Then there is the comprehensible, or the possible to us. That is the 10 to the 500 landscape. Finally, there is the universe that exists right now.
So when we say God can create any possible world, we're really just saying God can create any world that human theoretical physics can currently model.
Exactly. We don't even know if the concept of a number of possible worlds is coherent outside our own cognitive architecture.
Right. It could be totally different.
Metaphysical possibility might be continuous. It might be non-combinatorial. It might not be a list of options you can select from at all. The 10 to the 500 landscape is not a window into God's options. It is a mirror reflecting our own human cognitive structure.
That forces a tremendous amount of humility. We gaze into the ultimate mystery of the cosmos, and we basically just see the reflection of our own equations staring back at us.
Yeah, we do.
Which brings us to the most complex and honestly fascinating concept of this entire exploration: the ultimate, inescapable wall of human thought.
The compressibility boundary.
Yes.
This philosophical concept dictates that human thought, and therefore all human theology, is strictly limited to what can be compressed.
Let's clearly define compressibility because it's a very specific term in information theory. Comprehension requires a pattern.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
A data structure is considered compressible if it can be described by an algorithm that is shorter than the structure itself. So if you have a string of 1,000,000 alternating ones and zeros, that's highly compressible. You don't need 1,000,000 digits to explain it.
Right. You just give the instruction, repeat 10 500,000 times.
Exactly. But what happens when you encounter true, incompressible random noise?
Well, incompressible noise has no pattern. You cannot shorten the description. To describe it, you literally have to list every single random data point. And because it lacks any pattern, incompressible noise is cognitively invisible to us.
Indivisible.
Yeah, human brains are pattern-matching machines. If we cannot compress the data, we cannot think it, we cannot model it.
So because we can only think about or conceptualize compressible universes with detectable patterns, all theology is fundamentally the theology of the compressible.
Which leads to the profound epistemological claim that theology is always anthropology. And not in the cynical, dismissive sense that God is just a fictional human invention, but in the strict mechanical sense that God thought is absolutely restricted by human thinkability.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. Think about compressibility. Like trying to describe a brand new primary color to someone who has only ever seen red, yellow, and blue.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
You literally cannot do it using the vocabulary of existing colors. Saying a supreme being is omni or limitless is like saying this being is all the colors plus the ones we can't see.
Yeah.
It sounds incredibly profound. It induces awe. But operationally, mathematically, it means absolutely nothing. It is a signifier without a signified.
The Omni claim attempts to artificially transcend the compressibility boundary. It uses highly compressible human language, words like all, infinite, or unbounded, to describe something supposedly beyond human comprehension. The result is just self-reference without any actual content.
Let's look at the Texas sharpshooter fallacy to see why this matters for detecting design. Just to define that fallacy for a moment, it's like someone firing a gun randomly at the side of a barn and then walking up and painting a bullseye around the cluster of bullet holes, claiming they are a master marksman.
Right, creating the target after the fact.
Exactly. And an omni-god is the ultimate Texas sharpshooter.
Because an omnipotent being could theoretically embed any pattern or no pattern at all, or pure static disguised as a pattern. Whatever the universe looks like, an omnitheist can claim, well, the creator meant to do exactly that.
Yeah.
The theory accommodates all possible data, rendering it completely unfalsifiable.
Think about Carl Sagan's book Contact, where scientists search for extraterrestrial intelligence. The only way Jodie Foster's character can detect an alien signal is by finding a compressible pattern. In that case, a sequence of prime numbers.
Right, it had to have a pattern.
If the aliens had sent pure, uncompressible static or an infinite signal without constraints, humanity would have just categorized it as meaningless background radiation. We can only detect design when it operates within constraints.
Which brings us to the ultimate paradox of this framework. The limited, or engineering god, is arguably far more transcendent than the omni-god.
I struggled with that initially.
Yeah.
How can a limited God be more transcendent? That feels, I don't know, backward.
A limited theology is brutally honest about where human knowledge stops. It acknowledges the compressibility boundary. It says, here are the mathematical constraints we can observe, and here is the engineering we can detect. Beyond this, we cannot know.
Oh, I see.
It leaves room for actual silence, awe, and unknowing. Omnitheism, conversely, fills that silence with empty noise and disguised human projections. It uses the grammar of negation to pretend it has stepped outside of human cognition when it is really just punting a bullseye over the unknown.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this deep dive right now? We have traversed an intense intellectual landscape today. We started with Dr. Michael Huemer's statistical arguments that an infinite being is mathematically improbable.
We dissected the linguistic shell game of the word omni.
And we arrived at the profound realization that our definitions of a creator and of reality itself are strictly bound by the compressibility of our own minds.
And you know, the practical application of this compressibility boundary extends far beyond theology. It changes how you interact with any absolute claim, any political dogma, or any scientific theory of everything in your daily life.
It really does.
It is a masterclass in intellectual humility. It trains you to recognize when a theory is simply too perfect or too boundless to be operationally useful. It teaches you to look for the constraints, because the constraints are where the actual engineering and the actual truth reside.
As a final reminder, we haven't proved or disproved any religious truth today. We have purely explored the fascinating mechanics of how human beings structure their thoughts when confronting the ultimate unknown.
We've analyzed the architecture of our own comprehension.
But we want to leave you with one lingering question to chew on today. If our minds are strictly wired to recognize and process only compressible patterns, what fundamental, massive realities of the universe are we completely blind to right now, simply because they look like random noise to our brains?